Every winter, European settlers huddled by fires burning through massive wood piles and still dying from cold. Meanwhile, Native Americans slept comfortably in structures that would make modern survivalists call them crazy. The difference wasn't thicker blankets, it was something survival experts refuse to teach you today. You ever wonder how Native Americans survive brutal winters without Gore-Tex or heated seats? No fancy synthetic fabrics, no thermal underwear from Amazon, just them against minus 40-degree weather. Here's one secret that'll make your expensive moisturizer feel pretty useless: bear fat. They rendered it down into thick grease and slathered it directly on exposed skin. And I'm not talking about a light application like your morning face cream. This was a full coating. Face, hands, neck, anywhere the cold could bite. Why did it work so well? Unlike modern lotions that evaporate in 20 minutes, animal fat just sits there. For hours, it creates this waterproof barrier that blocks wind and moisture from yanking heat right out of your body. Basically, a wetsuit made of bear. But here's where it gets clever. Some tribes mix crushed pine needles into the fat. Not for the smell, though that probably helped, but because pine has mild antibacterial properties. Frostbite cracks your skin open, bacteria gets in, infection follows. The pine needles helped prevent that whole nightmare. Now the downside? Wolves loved the smell too. So hunters had to think carefully about when and where they applied it. Nothing ruins your day like becoming a snack while trying not to freeze. Archaeological digs have found fat-rendering pits near winter camps dating back over 3,000 years. This wasn't some occasional hack, it was standard practice. And kids, they got greased up every single morning before going outside. Basically the ancient version of slathering sunscreen on your 5-year-old before the beach, except the stakes were frostbite instead of sunburn. Pretty smart for people without a single chemistry degree between them, but fat on your skin only gets you so far when the real cold hits. Here's where it gets really clever. While everyone else was shivering in above-ground structures, several Native American tribes said, "Forget that," and went underground. Earth lodges and pit houses were dug 3 to 4 feet into the soil. Why? Because dirt doesn't care what the weather's doing up top. Below the frost line, ground temperature holds steady around 50 degrees. Doesn't matter if it's negative 30 outside with wind howling like my ex-wife at a Black Friday sale. The Mandan people took this concept and ran with it. Their lodges housed 30 to 40 people at once. Now here's the math that'll blow your mind. Body heat alone raised interior temperatures another 15 to 20 degrees. So you've got 50 from the earth plus 15 from packed-in humans. That's 65 degrees while a blizzard rages outside. Pretty smart, right? But the entrance design is what really gets me. These tunnels faced away from prevailing winds and actually sloped downward. Cold air sinks. So frigid drafts literally rolled back outside before reaching the main living space. No fancy engineering degree required, just centuries of observation. And those smoke holes on top? Surprisingly tiny, about the size of a dinner plate. Seems counterintuitive. Wouldn't you want more ventilation? Nope. Too much airflow meant losing precious heat. They figured out the exact balance between not suffocating and not freezing. One lodge required roughly 10 tons of soil and grass for the roof alone. That's serious construction. But here's the payoff. These structures lasted 10 to 15 years with minimal repairs. European explorers in the 1800s described walking into earth lodges and immediately starting to sweat. They expected frozen misery. Instead, tropical warmth. Now staying underground only worked if you didn't run out of fuel. Which brings us to something most people overlook completely. Here's the thing about winter nights that most people don't consider. You can have the warmest shelter, the best fur clothing, and enough food to last months. But if your fire dies at 3 in the morning when it's 40 below, you might not wake up. Native Americans solved this with something brilliantly simple. They took turns staying awake. Families divided the night into shifts, with someone always watching that fire. Always. No exceptions. And here's what's clever about it. The firekeeper role usually went to grandparents. Elders naturally sleep lighter anyway. Their joints ache. They wake up constantly. So instead of fighting biology, tribes worked with it. Grandma wasn't just babysitting flames. She had a job that mattered. Now you might think they kept roaring fires going. Nope. Small and smoky was the goal. Big flames look impressive, sure, but they chew through fuel like my neighbor's teenager goes through pizza. Plus, sparks flying near fur bedding? That's how you burn down your shelter and solve your cold problem permanently. The preferred fuel on the plains? Dried buffalo dung. I know. Doesn't sound glamorous, but here's why it worked. One good pile burned steady for 6 to 8 hours. Wood burns hot and fast. Dung burns slow and consistent. When you're rationing fuel to survive until spring, consistent wins every time. And falling asleep on duty? That wasn't just embarrassing. In many tribes, it was considered one of the worst things you could do. Social disgrace level stuff. The result? Nobody got a full night's rest during deep winter. Everyone was tired, everyone was a little grumpy, but everyone stayed alive. Speaking of staying alive, clothing choices made an even bigger difference than most people realize. Here's the thing about fur that most people get completely wrong. Caribou hide isn't just warm. It's engineered by nature in a way that makes modern scientists scratch their heads. Each hair shaft is hollow, completely hollow, like thousands of tiny straws packed together, trapping air better than any synthetic fiber we've invented. And Native Americans figured this out centuries before microscopes existed. They wore fur with the hair facing inward against their skin. Not outward like some fashion statement, inward, because that's where the heat was and that's where it needed to stay. But warmth wasn't even the biggest challenge. Sweat was. You start hiking through snow, your body heats up, you sweat. That moisture sits against your skin, and suddenly you're colder than when you started. Cotton does this beautifully. It absorbs sweat, holds it like a sponge, then freezes against your body. There's a reason survival instructors call cotton death cloth. Native Americans solved this centuries ago. Their clothing was cut loose, deliberately loose. When you got warm, excess heat vented out through gaps. When you stopped moving, everything sealed back up. It's the same principle behind those fancy moisture-wicking fabrics we pay $80 for today. The Inuit took this even further with a 2-layer parka system. Inner layer with fur facing in, outer layer with fur facing out. Between them, dead air space, the ultimate insulator. And the seams? Sewn with sinew that actually swelled when wet. Getting rained on made your parka more waterproof, not less. A single caribou parka weighed about 4 pounds. Modern gear offering the same warmth, twice that weight, minimum. But even the best clothing can't save you if you're running on empty. And what these people ate in winter, that's where things get really interesting. Here's the thing nobody talks about when it comes to surviving brutal winters. You can have the best shelter, the warmest furs, a fire burning all night long. But if you're eating wrong, your body becomes a freezer from the inside out. Native Americans figured this out thousands of years before nutritionists existed. When temperatures dropped, their diet shifted dramatically. We're talking 70 to 80% fat and protein. Almost no carbs. And there's actual science behind this. See, digesting fat generates way more body heat than digesting bread or vegetables. Your body has to work harder to break it down, and that work produces warmth. It's like the difference between throwing newspaper on a fire versus a dense log. One burns hot and fast. The other keeps you warm for hours. Pemmican was their secret weapon. Dried meat pounded together with rendered fat and berries. 1 pound contained roughly 3,500 calories. That's more energy dense than military MREs today. Soldiers in Afghanistan would have killed for this stuff. But the real prize? Bone marrow. Hunters didn't just take the meat and leave. They cracked every single bone to get that fatty goodness inside. Pure calories in easily digestible form. Oh, and here's something that blew my mind. They never ate snow directly, ever. Because melting snow inside your body burns precious calories your system can't spare. They always melted it in containers first. Smart, right? Some tribes intentionally gained 10 to 15 pounds every autumn. Not laziness, strategy. That extra body fat was basically a built-in fuel tank for January. Pacific Northwest peoples, they drank fish oil straight. Sounds disgusting. But those omega-3 fatty acids improved blood flow to fingers and toes in freezing conditions. Now, all this food needed proper storage. And their methods for that? Genuinely genius. All right, here's where snow stops being your enemy and starts becoming your best friend. Most people think of snow as the problem. Cold, wet, miserable. But Native Americans looked at a blizzard and saw free building material falling from the sky. And no, I'm not just talking about igloos. Tribes across North America figured out something brilliant. They'd pile 6 to 12 inches of snow against their teepee walls and lodge exteriors. Just packed it right up against the sides. Why? Because snow is 90 to 95% trapped air. That's it. Air. And air is one of nature's greatest insulators. A simple snow wall could raise interior temperatures by 20 degrees. 20 degrees. That's the difference between shivering all night and actually sleeping. But here's where it gets clever. Ever heard of a quinzhee? It's basically a hollowed-out snow mound. Emergency shelter. Could be built in under 2 hours. The trick, though, was patience. You'd pile up the snow, then wait about 90 minutes before digging it out. This let the ice crystals bond together into something actually stable. My grandfather always said patience costs nothing but saves everything. He was talking about fishing, but same principle applies. Now, one detail most people mess up. The interior walls had to be smooth. Rough surfaces let heat escape, but smooth surfaces, they radiate warmth right back at you. Same reason igloos feel surprisingly cozy inside. And those ventilation holes weren't random either, poked at 45-degree angles. Let carbon dioxide escape without creating drafts that'd freeze you solid. Pretty ingenious for primitive technology, right? But snow shelters only worked if you could heat them. And the portable heating methods these tribes developed honestly puts modern hand warmers to shame. Hot rocks. Sounds primitive, right? Like something a caveman would do. Well, yeah, that's the point. It worked. Native Americans figured out that certain stones could absorb fire heat and release it slowly for hours. We're talking 4 to 6 hours of warmth from a single rock. That's longer than most phone batteries last these days. But here's the thing. Not all rocks are created equal. Porous stones? Terrible idea. Heat them up and they explode. Literally. The moisture inside turns to steam and boom, shrapnel everywhere. So flat river rocks became the gold standard. They heated evenly and didn't try to kill you. The process was simple. Heat the stones in the fire, wrap them in hide or fur, tuck them into your sleeping area, instant bed warmer. My grandmother used a hot water bottle for the same reason, except hers leaked constantly. These didn't. Now pregnant women and infants always got priority placement near the heated rocks. Always. That wasn't negotiable. Keeping them warm was literally job number one for the whole family. Some tribes took it further. They'd bury hot coals beneath a layer of sand, then lay their sleeping mats on top. Basically, an ancient heated floor. Koreans call this ondol and act like they invented it. They didn't. Then there's soapstone. This stuff was prized like gold because it absorbed heat slowly and released it even slower. Natural thermal battery. The Ojibwe carried small handstones in pouches against their chests during winter hunts. Whenever they passed a fire, quick recharge, portable heating that weighed almost nothing. Speaking of carrying warmth with you, the next strategy didn't require any rocks at all, just other humans. Frostbite doesn't just hurt, it kills tissue. And once your fingers turn black, they're not coming back. Native Americans knew this. Their solution? Each other. The moment someone showed signs of frostbite, white patches on cheeks, numb fingertips, toes that stopped hurting, the response was immediate. No hesitation. You shoved that frozen hand against the warmest skin available. Stomach, armpits, groin. Yeah, it sounds awkward, but you know what's more awkward? Losing 3 fingers because you were too polite to ask. This wasn't just emergency medicine, it was how winter travel worked. Hunting parties always included 3 or 4 people minimum. Not because the hunting was easier, because if someone fell through ice or got caught in a whiteout, warm bodies were right there. Going alone? That was basically announcing you had a death wish. Babies had the best deal. They stayed strapped directly against their mother's chest, tucked inside her parka like a little furnace passenger. Shared body heat, continuous warmth, 0 effort required from the baby. Pretty smart arrangement, if you ask me. Sleeping arrangements followed the same logic. Children and elders got the center position, surrounded by adults on all sides, like a human sandwich of warmth. Observers estimated this setup reduced firewood needs by 40% compared to everyone sleeping separately. But here's what really gets me. Dogs weren't just companions or hunting partners. They were heaters with legs. Each dog sleeping against a human added warmth equivalent to a small space heater. They slept inside shelters, against bodies, wherever they fit. Some families kept 5 or 6 dogs specifically for this purpose. Body heat was currency, and smart people knew how to bank it together. Speaking of things that predicted survival, there's something even more powerful than shared warmth. Here's the thing about surviving winter. You can have the warmest shelter, the fattiest food, and the best fur clothing. None of it matters if a blizzard catches you off guard. Native Americans treated weather prediction like we treat checking our phones, except their version actually worked. Animals were the original meteorologists. When elk suddenly moved to lower elevations, heavy snow was coming in 2 to 3 days. Guaranteed. Birds flying in tight formations meant wind shifts. Squirrels gathering food frantically. Storm approaching. These weren't superstitions. They were patterns observed over thousands of years. And the weird part is, modern science confirms most of it. Animals sense barometric pressure changes before we do. But it went deeper than watching critters. Cloud formations, wind direction shifts, the way smoke rose from fires. All of it told a story. Kids learned this stuff before they learned to hunt, because knowing weather was that critical. The Lakota had over 30 different words for snow conditions. 30. Each one described exactly how that type of snow would affect travel, hunting, and shelter building. Meanwhile, I know like 3. Snow. Slush. Yellow snow you avoid. Camp placement was strategic genius too. They positioned themselves near natural windbreaks, cliff faces, dense forest patches, hill slopes that blocked prevailing storms, not by accident, by design. Moving an entire camp before a blizzard hit? Completely normal. Easier to relocate than dig out from 4 feet of snow. Makes sense, right? Predicting a Chinook, those sudden warm winds let tribes time hunts perfectly. Animals were easier to track when snow softened, so they could read the sky like a book. They could predict storms days out. But what happened when those predictions failed and the food ran out? That backup system is next. Here's where survival got real. Native Americans didn't just prepare for bad winters. They prepared for disasters. The kind where hunting fails for weeks, where blizzards trap you inside, where everything goes wrong at once. Food caches weren't stored in one spot. That's amateur stuff. They buried dried meat and pemmican in multiple locations, sometimes miles apart. If wolves found one stash, if enemies raided another, you still had backup, and backup for your backup. Those underground pits kept food preserved for 2 to 3 years, not months, years. My grandmother kept leftovers for maybe a week before they became science experiments. These folks were storing emergency rations that outlasted some marriages. But here's what really prevented mass starvation. Trade networks. Tribes talked to each other. When the Crow had a terrible hunting season, neighboring groups with surplus would trade. Food moved between communities like an ancient insurance policy. Nobody wanted their trading partners to die off. Bad for business. And when things got truly desperate, starvation foods, inner tree bark, lichens scraped off rocks, dried roots that tasted like sadness. Not exactly gourmet dining, but these backup calories kept people breathing for weeks until conditions improved. Fat became so precious that marrow bones were cracked, boiled, then boiled again. And again. Every single calorie got extracted. Nothing wasted. Now here's the twist nobody expects. Winter wasn't actually the deadliest season. Spring was. Food stores ran empty. New plants hadn't sprouted yet. Bodies were weakened from months of cold. That gap between winter reserves and spring abundance, that's when people died. Which explains why every system we've covered wasn't about comfort. It was about making it to summer.